Okay, I believe we are live. So let's get going on this discussion. Basically, my plan is to explain details of how I won a national championship with my under 14 girls Dynamos team, a team that I started with a group of girls aged 6, 7, and 8, I guess, and take you through the 6 years briefly of the kind of training I did up until they were 14, and then take you into the uh, the actual season where we won the national championship and the tactics that we used, because there's some interesting little differences when coaching youth players that are different than when coaching adult players or even professional players. And so I think that's worth mentioning as well. So let's get started. So I started the team, I started doing some clinics once a week, I think, over like 6 9 weeks indoors for 6 7 8 6 and 7 year old girls. We got a good group together, so we decided to form a team, and we started the team, I think, at the under 8 age group. Now, for the first few years, I was a big believer and still am in pretty much everything has to be down to teaching technique and skills and stuff like that. That has to come over and above anything related to winning, anything related to tactical stuff, although that can be talked about a little bit and mentioned as you go along. But basically, it was just working on tactics and no, sorry, not tactics, working on technique. And let me explain this kind of stuff I used to do. I used to do a ton of passing and first touch. So we used to do tons of exercises with passing and first touch. The idea was to pass the ball was to keep it rolling on the ground. And the idea when you receive the ball is to be able to control the ball with one touch so that the ball is 3 or 4 feet out of your body, so you can now step forward to do your next thing, which could be a dribble, another pass, or a shot, or whatever it is. So yeah, we did tons and tons of that year after year after year. Now, it wasn't every single training session, but just literally tons and tons of that. And we picked up on that all the time. During games, during small-sided games, during the scrimmage at the end of practice. And one of the things I always used to say to the girls was, pass that ball how you would like to receive it. So you don't want to receive a ball that's bouncing on the ground and gets to your knee high when you've got a defender close by, and you've got to try and control that and then decide what you want to do with it. So it was also a culture thing. It was really hammered home that, passing that ball on the ground and having a good first touch was everything. So we really worked on that technique. The other thing that we worked a ton on was shooting technique. And this kind of gives tons and tons of confidence. If you can get young kids to be able to shoot a ball with their instep, with their laces, with their ankle locked and their toe pointed down, and hit that ball low on the ground, a line drive, that gives them so much confidence when they can do that, because an 8-year-old, 9-year-old kids are still kicking the ball with their toes in some instances. Some instances their ankles is loose and floppy and coming up, and the ball has lots of spin on it. So we did tons and tons of shooting. We also worked a lot on dribbling. We had, well, when I say dribbling, I kind of look at dribbling as running with the ball as well. So it's a combination of dribbling and running with the ball. So we did tons of that as well. And then we also did a lot, and an absolute ton of this on 1v1 skills. So we showed them fakes and moves, like the curver stuff. We showed them, Maradona moves, the Stanley Matthews hop and touch, the scissors and the step overs, those kind of things, the Cruyff turns. So those are the things that we worked on over the younger years. And, Absolutely tons of it. I can't tell you. We were still doing, first touch practices when they were under 12s. We were still doing shooting practices when they were under 12s, just like we did them when they were under 8. It's not something really that you teach them how to do and then they learn it and they don't need it anymore. It's something that is a constant. So we worked a lot on technical stuff, especially passing in the first touch, the shooting technique, dribbling and running with the ball, and 1v1 skills. Now, the interesting thing is, if you've got a good group of players and you teach them that stuff, they're going to be pretty successful because they're going to be coming up against teams that don't do that very well. And so being able to pass the ball and have a good first touch and being able to shoot, they're going to score a lot of goals. 1v1 moves, they're going to score a lot of goals. They're going to get out of trouble. So we were very successful through those ages, but not because we were focused on winning, but because actually the opposite, we focused so much on technique. So the other thing we did is we used to play them in different positions. And we play them in different positions constantly. Sometimes we would play like half a season. And I got this from another coach in Kansas City at the time who used to do the same. So we'd play half the team would be defenders for half the season, and then they would play forwards for the other half of the season. Sometimes. Now, some players, like midfielders, would tend to kind of stay where they were a little bit. But, we'd give a lot of exposure to different positions. And sometimes it would be game to game. So sometimes at a defenders, I'd say, okay, in this game, you guys are going to play forwards, and the forwards are going to play defenders. So they got exposure. Now, you tend to find out at that point that some players are more suitable to playing defense than they are playing attacking players. Their mindset is they're happier and more comfortable trying to stop something happening as they are trying to create something. And it's the opposite way for forwards. You got some forwards who just want to create and they just want to score. They not even interested in defending. So you tend to find that out as well as you go through that. Now, in my seasons in Kansas City, were split up. We used to play outdoors in the fall, then we'd play indoors from like November through February. And indoors was in the indoor arenas, not futsal, it was in the indoor arenas. And then we play outdoors again in the spring. And I actually quite like that because the indoor season, that's where we used to get a lot of good stuff done, because outdoors, to be quite honest, the fields weren't that great. They were bumpy and stuff. And when you're indoors, you're playing on a carpet pretty much. So you could really get to work on the technical stuff that we used to work on. We used to play different positions. So that was kind of like the build-up. Now, we're talking 6 years from under 8s all the way through to under 14s. Now, gradually, as they got a little bit older, then we'd start talking a little more strategy and tactics and systems of play and stuff like that. But under 13s, under 14s, we would still do a heck of a lot of technical work in training. Now, it wasn't drills as much. It was more in movement stuff like small-sided games or the scrimmage at the end of practice that we used to do. That was always focused home. They'd be scrimmaging and I'd stop it just to point out and say, what kind of pass was that? Pass the ball on the ground, have it so in the manner that you want to receive it. And so it was just a culture thing, but that would go on all the way through. Okay, so that's the technical part. That was the important part of making sure that they had the kind of abilities to be able to carry out the tactical part. So let's have a look at the tactical part. There was 5 keys, I thought. And I've got all this in a book, by the way, and I'll show you that book during this webinar. But we had pretty much 5 keys that we had that really made us successful and different than other teams. One of them is we just played a high-pressure defense. And when I say high-pressure defense, it was practically to the point of being reckless in that we would throw all our eggs in one basket and we'd just try and stop them playing. If their defenders had the ball, we would just press them relentlessly. Everybody would press up, and basically we'd force mistakes out of them. And I may mention this later, but I'll say it now. But this is one of the differences between youth soccer and adult soccer or pro soccer. Where you've got skilled professionals. Although they're doing it more now for professional soccer. Jurgen Klopp is doing this now. Pep Guardiola is doing it now, where they've got high pressure. They press up high and relentlessly as well. But doing this in youth soccer is even more successful because you've got youth players in the opposition. So if the goalkeeper rolls the ball out to them, or one of their defenders has the ball and they pass it to another defender, and they're trying to build out of the back. Now, if you high press them, they don't have the skill level, they don't have the confidence level, they don't have the experience level to be able to deal with that high pressure like top pros would at Liverpool or Barcelona. So they're going to make a lot more mistakes than the pros are going to make. So that was something that I figured out pretty early, was that if we press them early, we're going to get turnovers like crazy, and we're going to get turnovers where we now have the ball in the attacking third or in the attacking half. And it stops them getting near our goal as well. And so high pressure defense was one. The number 2 tactic we used was we'd attack from wide positions a lot. And there's a few reasons for this. One, I was a wide player when I was younger, so I used to love playing out wide, and I guess I had a tendency to think that would be a successful strategy, and it was. But if you can get, and we did have good, fast, athletic, skillful wide players, that's where the space is. That's where they get the one-on-one situations. That's where they're going to be successful. And we did. We attacked them from wide relentlessly, and that's where we got tons of goals. Now, it wasn't all from crosses, because we'd get it wide and we'd play the balls into the forwards' feet, and we'll talk about that later when we get into the training sessions and the actual formations and stuff that we did. But we would attack from wide, and that was just super successful for us. Point number 3 was conditioning. And I can tell you this without a shadow of a doubt, that without that, we would not have won a national championship. We did conditioning from pre-season. We did conditioning throughout the season. And it actually, what helped in our favor was the previous season at under 13s, we lost in the final at regionals. If we'd have won that, we would have been one of the 4 teams in the national championships. So we lost in the final. We lost in overtime. And one of the reasons we lost was the other team was probably in better shape than we were. We weren't in ideal shape. We did a little conditioning, but we didn't focus on it too much. And the girls were heartbroken, and they were determined. And, so we had conversations, and basically it was if you don't want that to happen again, then you've got to be in the best shape possible. You've got to be in better shape than the opposition. And we were. I really don't remember one game where we played where we were not the stronger team at the end of the game, that we were not the best conditioned team in that game. Every single game I would put us down to that. And we had, well, if we go back through regionals, the 5 games in regionals, and 4 games in, let's say the last 3 games in regionals and the 4 games in nationals, that's 7 games. Every game was decided by 1 goal or less. And one of the things that really helped us was our conditioning in those games. So yeah, conditioning was critical. Now, the 4th one, and we won't get into this too much, was the player investment. And that was just, as I said, the girls were heartbroken from losing in regional finals the season before, and they were just determined, and they made a commitment, and we barely had anybody miss practice the whole season. We might have had, let's say, half a dozen times where 1 player missed a practice for the whole season, a whole 9 months or however long that was. And we used to have conversations where, you know, it wasn't about me as a coach, it was about them as a team. I was there to help them as a team. Whatever they wanted me to do, we would do it. If they wanted to do conditioning and be the best conditioned team, I would do it for them. If they wanted to go ahead and try and compete for a national championship, we would do it. I'd explain to them what they would need to do, and we would do it. So the fifth thing was team chemistry, and this was something that was brought up season after season after season. And, you know, I don't take I take some credit, I guess, but the girls created their own team chemistry to a certain level. And I say that because I coached other teams, and I didn't have this level of team chemistry with other teams, even though I tried. So it's a combination of the players and the coach, I guess. So anyway, so that's the critical things that we needed in order to win the national championship. So what formation did we use? And this, I think, is another key. So let me share this on my screen. Okay, this is another. I'm trying to see if I can get thing going and my screen, because the audio last time, and I've tried this and couldn't get it to work. Or oh, maybe it looks like we're working. We're live. Good. Okay, so I think I'm gonna go this and take a chance, and I hope it's another 25 minutes of my time and another of your time. So here's where we lost the audio last this diagram. And now this diagram is the best out there, is academysoccercoach.uk. They're great, best diagrammer. We use it for all our diagrams in our books and our articles. Academy Soccer Coach are great, guys out there are great, and we just love it. So academysoccercoach.uk. Okay, so this is where we lost the audio, and let's talk about the formation, because I always looked at a formation as two formations, especially when you have very good athletic players. Now, I used to use a 4-4-2, or not always. I set up with a 4-4-2 because I'm comfortable with a 4-4-2. I know a 4-4-2, but this system also works with any other formation, whether it's a 4-3-3, 3-5-2, or whatever you want to use. Now, when we are defending, we are basically in a 4-4-2. But when we're attacking, these guys push up, these guys push up, push up. I say these guys, it's a girls' team, so these guys, and we are left with two center defenders. Now, yeah, but what the heck? It's youth soccer. It's not pro soccer. It's not the Champions League final. It's youth soccer. Let's have some fun with it. Now, the other thing that I have to mention here is our two center defenders. Without a shadow of a doubt, I never came across anyone faster than those two. I never came across anybody more aggressive than those two. Never came across anybody that was as determined as they were. And we had two of them. They actually went on and got Division 1 scholarships. They were both incredible players. So we could take risks by just giving those two back. And 95% of the time, they would sniff out that risk and put it out because they were so fast and so aggressive. They'd come across anybody faster than them. We could take that chance. So that was our formation. Now you can use this formation with different ones. So for example, let's go back here to say we're going to play with a 4-3-3. So now we could go like that. 4-3-3. So ending, you pull these guys back. You've got a 4-5-1. These guys push up. These guys push up. Or these girls push up. And now you've got a 2-3. And to me, that just made common sense. And this is 20 years ago. We do this, and I think more and more teams are doing it now, and more pro teams are looking. Now, getting back to my situation, which was the 4-4-2 here. These were more than capable of running up at 2/3 of the field. And these fullbacks were more than capable of running up and down 2/3. So it made sense to have them do that. Otherwise, if you just have them using half the field or so, they're capable of, and you not get the best out of what you've got. So yes, I find this because one of the weaknesses is you've only got 2 centre mid. Well, in the fall of our championship season, I actually used to play this up here, this system. This left player, he was just an incredible athlete, and she was like a racehorse. She could run the field. So I just used to say to her, Carly, the left side and down that left side, that is all yours. And we used to play in the centre mid. Now that helped a lot. But once we lost Carly, she was a real tennis player as well. And in the spring, she decided to focus on tennis. So we lost Carly, and we ended up having to go to the 4-4-2. So the strength of this was wide play. And that's something that I always, that was one of our tactics, like I mentioned to you earlier. We all used to look to play out wide. The name of our game was to pass the ball around, do what you can, and then pass the ball wide. Wide, that's where the space was. That's where we were usually up against just one defender with space behind them. If the defender came all the way out, it would leave space in the middle, the midfielders, center midfielders. If the defender kind of in here, let's the defender, and our players out wide here, defender didn't really want to come all the way out wide. The player would have plenty of space. If they decided to go out wide here, then it would leave plenty of space here, center mids and forwards to operate. It was always a contest. Let me just stop there. It's always a contest of which was their will on the other team. And so although our weakness was having 2 center mids, if we were getting the ball early and having success using the flanks, they would need to respond, the opposition would need to respond, pull players out wide. That would leave us more space in midfield for 2 players to operate, and it would pull one of the midfielders usually out wide or drop him back to deal with the onslaught that we were giving them. So 95% of the time, having 2 midfielders wasn't a factor. Now, occasionally, we'd get caught being outnumbered, and that would hurt us. But overall, if we could impose our will on those, then that's obviously. Now let's talk about the tactics we use. Youth soccer. So in my mind, I used to keep it as simple as possible. Now, we were a really good passing team, so we would pass the ball around. Obviously, as I said, I focused in the younger years on a good first touch, pass around. So we could pass the ball pretty well. There were other teams, we'd come across occasionally other teams that might be as good or maybe better than us, but we were definitely the better passing teams around of all the teams we played. But we used to keep it really simple. Our to get the ball wide. If we got the ball wide, let's say this wide midfielder had the ball. If we got the ball wide, then we would look on, maybe get crosses in. That was one option. The other option was to forward's feet, so the forward could come here to show for it. Forward could then lay it off. So there really wasn't any exceptional tactics. We didn't want to overload tactics. They could find their own way around. If they passed it around with the objective of getting it wide, it would be successful. And so we kind of kept it simple there. So one of the tactics we used was high pressure defending. Now, high pressure defending, I think I talked about this earlier. In youth soccer, it pays even more dividends than it does in the pro game. Now, more and more teams are using the high pressure, like Jurgen Klopp and at Liverpool, and Pep Guardiola, where they press high and force mistakes. We did that kind of to reckless abandon. Because, you might have the best professional players in the world, defenders, might be able to handle that high pressure with the composure they have, the skills they have. They might be able to pass way out of that. But when you're talking players, 13, 14, 16-year-old players, they don't have that confidence. They don't have that technical ability to be able to do that. So we forced a ton of mistakes by, pressing high. And we didn't really do too much training on it. It was just to force them in one direction. Closest person to the ball presses on it quick. Everybody's on the closest player to them, leaving the player, the defender on the opposition with the ball, so he's got no options to pass to. Okay, so the other thing we would do is include our fullbacks in the attack as well. So let's say this wide player has gone all the way down the field with the ball. For the box. Now this wide player we would expect to come in here and get on the back end of the box. Now would be expected to support the player. So they'd be, 20 yards behind them. So if this wide player could not get the cross in because the defender, we trail it back to this, and this fullback gets the cross in. There's already a box because they're hoping for a cross from the wide player. And actually, this right fullback, she went on to play professional soccer. We got more assists. She was our leading assist for the season. We scored more goals from crosses and her balls in than any other player on. Because the team is all back. They're all back in the box trying to defend, chasing this wide player with the ball. None of them are hanging around here. If they're forward, the forward's usually in the middle of the field here. No other player from the opposition team wide and back here. Pointless. Available, we get crosses in. We'd include the fullbacks. Now, what about the fullback? So, if the opposite fullback, they would be expected now to kind of the same space along fullback is, but they'd be hanging around here because if this girl puts the cross, ball's trailed and the cross is coming in from here, looks at that cross. If it looks like it's being overhit, end up around here, run. If it doesn't here and they're ready for a trail, they're ready to maybe run down and receive a pass and get a crossing that way. Fullback going all the way in to try and get in on the end of the cross themselves, because if the cross doesn't make it, we lose possession. We too far to recover, kind of hang around there. But quite often we'd overhit crosses and hit with them, and then put the cross back in, that kind of thing as well. Okay. So, what would we ask the centre mids to do? The centre mids basically, whoever had the ball, the centre, so kind of here, so this player could show for it back to them here. If they had it, so let's move the ball here to this player, so that we can maybe make a pass in here instead of putting a cross in. So their job is show for the ball. Let's see. What else did we do? I'll tell you what, we'll go look at the roles and responsibilities in a second. Let me just explain our substitution posse, because this was fairly simple. We've never had a starting 11, players that started and other players that started on the bench. We just used to have a rotation system. Everybody played pretty much equal time throughout the season for 99% of the game, practically. And the only way that wouldn't happen was if it was a important game, a special game, and one player was doing a real good job on another player, or one player, they couldn't handle one of our, something like that. But literally, 99% of the time it was a straight up rotation. This is the way we used to do it. We used to have 3 players for 2 positions. So we'd have players that could play centre back. So we'd have these 2 players here, and then we'd have 1 player on the bench. And then 10 minutes or so, we would sub. And one of these centre defenders and this centre defender would take their place. 10 minutes later, the other centre would come off, and that one on the bench would then take that place. Now they've all played 3 sets of 10 minutes, if that's a 30-minute game. And then in the next game, whichever 2 players started, now one of those would start on the bench, and the player who was on the bench, it would be her to start. So that situation, the girls knew what the situation was, but they had control of it. I never knew who started the games. It didn't really matter who started the games. The girls knew that if these 2 started, they'd, before the game, they'd say, okay, it's meant to sit on the bench, you 2 girls are out. It started. And that's the way it used to work. So they handled that the most. Now, so we had that for 3 players for the 2 centre defenders. We had the same 2 centre mids. We had 3 for the 2 fullbacks. So they play on the left, on the right sometimes. 3 players for the mids, and they play on the opposite flanks. And 3 players for the forwards. And that's how we did it. And it was, so we had no set starting 11, and they would play equal playing time. And we did that since they were kids. So that's the substitution policy. Look what's next. Let's look at the roles of position on the field. So let's start off with forwards. Now we can look at the attacking roles and defending roles. So let's look at attacking roles first. So attacking roles. 2 forwards. Their roles and responsibility to get in the box, to get on the end of any crosses. So if the ball was going out wide, this player was going out wide here, their job was to make runs into the penalty area on the end of crosses. If this person had the ball, then their job was to come short for them, maybe. This person came long, so now this person, the wide player, to play into the feet there, to play long up. And it's the same if this wide player is, and the fullback is here. Again, the forwards one would go long. Always determined by the closest player on that side of the field. This player is looking at this player can see ball and the other forward. If this person decided to make a run long, then this would be the opposite and come short. This person came short, this forward would do the opposite. So it was real simple. We gave them those. They received the ball. The forward received the ball. They tried for this player. They could drop it back to a midfielder, and then play it to the other forward or switch it to the other. So we kind of gave them just basic options, and they would play from there. We didn't want to hold them with too many things that they had to do. We gave them basic options, and then they could build their game from there. So that is the forward. Now let's look at those. So we've got wide midfielders. Their job was to get out wide the ball. If we have the ball, we want them as wide as possible. When they got those options that we just talked about, look to playing depending on where they were on the field. I really stress with the wide players was that you only had one defender on your side, and you've got first choice. I want you to do is to take that player on. That's it. No excuses. Don't pass it. What I used to say was, look, the team has worked really hard. They've made 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 passes. We find the ball out wide, which is what we want to do. We've got it out wide for you to go do your job. We don't want you passing back to a midfielder. Go take the player on. Go have some fun. Let's go see if we can beat him and crosses him. And they loved it. Even I was a wide player when I played. But being a wide player or any player, and the coach is giving you carte blanche and saying, look, when you get the ball, first choice, go run down that wing and go take that player on and beat him. If you don't beat him, fine, recover, let's do it, but do it the next time. And if it doesn't happen that time, don't worry about it, do it again the next time. How great is that for a player? How is that for a 14-year-old? So that's what we expected them to do, take players on, get crosses in. Now, if you're the opposite side midfielder, then, okay, so let's look at here. This box, this forward's in the box. Let's say again, this player's moved. If this person is looking crossing, this opposite midfielder also has box. Now, yeah, it's hard work to run up and down the field. They're 2/3 of the field, up and down. They're taking a position, 2 positions. But they were good enough, and they were fit enough, and they were athletic enough that they could do it. It was never an issue. So that would get an extra player at the back end of the box in case it won't cross. And as we said, the fullback here and around here, in case it was overhit, they would then run and collect the ball. That's the roles for the wide players. Okay, so now let's look at the roles for the centre mids. So really had let's first of all look at how they used to play. The ideal situation would be one centre mid ended up pushing up through the other midfielder would kind of hang around behind support him, and if we lost possession, they would be filling that space in the middle of the field. That's the ideal position or the ideal situation. But sometimes what would happen is they both end up, and we'd end up with a big in the middle of the field, and we could get exposed. So sometimes I used to nominate and say, you're a holding mid, attacking mid, and we would do that. Switch those positions each time they subbed. So it depended on the players. It depended when they were young. They both get caught up there. As they are more responsible, they kind of understood the situation. So that's that. Now, the other role I made was to always show. I don't care who had the ball. The mid should be showing for the ball and available to the pass. If this fullback has got it, should be showing for a pass. If it's got it, it should be showing for a pass. If the wide player's got it, it's showing for a pass. If the forward's got the ball at this, they should be showing for a pass. Each player on the field, if they've got the ball, one outlet will always be the centre midfielder. Always looking to get open and find some space and be an outlet for them. Doesn't mean they received it all the time. We wanted that option to be there. If this centre back has the ball and they want to pass out here to the wide fielder, that would be their first choice. That'd be great. Wide midfielder can make a run. But if all of a sudden that midfielder gets closed down and now there's no space to make that, they still need other options. So attacking wise, the centre midfielders show for the ball all the time. Now the fullbacks, they play a big role for us. As I said, our right fullback had more assists than any other player. So if this winger has the ball and now the crossing, the fullback should be about 20 yards or so behind, ready for a trail pass. And then when they get that trail pass, they cross the ball in, play the ball into the forward's feet, or even running diagonally. This player used to love doing that, diagonally. They try and get a shot in or a pass in, but sometimes they diagonally. Defender would come at them, and then they'd pass the ball back to this wide player once they'd committed the defender. So they cause all kinds of trouble. And I see so many, usually with inexperienced coaches, their fullbacks are back here doing it. And I'm like, okay, we're attacking. We want everybody attacking except our defenders. Everybody involved in the play. As I said, this opposite side fullback over here getting ready in case a cross was overhit. So that's the responsibilities for let's have a look at responsibilities. Okay, so defending responsibilities. The two forwards they got a responsibility each. The forward that was closest to the ball, if that was the situation, would attack the ball and press the ball and try and get pressure on the opposition with the ball. The other forward would have one other goal, get back behind the ball. So if this forward's here, being in for a cross, and we lose possession of the ball, so let's say this person has the ball here. This forward would go and press the ball. This forward's job was not to hang around and jog back. This forward would have to be behind the ball. Once we got back behind the ball, relax. And it was the round. If this forward was closest to the ball, then that's what they would. So that was the forwards. One at the ball, the closest one to the ball, the other one dropped behind the ball. The centre mids, same thing. Everybody, let's put this as a blanket thing. Everybody, once we lost possession, was to get behind the ball. I don't care if it's a 20-yard sprint, a 50-yard sprint. Your job was to get back behind the ball. Once you were behind the ball, you can relax. Then you sit down, and your job then was to prep on the next closest player to the ball. So let's look at this situation here. A defender on here. So one of the opposition has the ball. The closest player to the ball. Every other player, once they're behind the ball, is now sent to press the player. Now it's a little reckless, and I don't think that would work professionally because players are so good they can get out of that, and you've got to kind of mark spaces and anticipate they're going to play. But press up on a player. Person with the ball now has nobody to pass to. If they try a pass, we've got a good chance of stealing that ball and winning that ball. If they don't see anybody open, they'll hit a long, good chance of winning that, and we have possession again. So that was our situation when we did all for everybody. One thing I forgot to mention here for the forwards was we tried to be flexible. So in this situation here, if this person has the ball, we'd maybe force them into, let them come over to this side of the field, to go to this side of the field, and so all our players knew where the ball was going, made it a lot easier for us. But that's a standard coaching that most people would know. Okay, so the defending midfielders, they'd fill that middle. Wide midfielders would close in. So now we'd have 4 center midfielders practically. And if, let's put a player out here. So this player would close up, not touching distance, but would close up enough that would tempt this person to pass the ball here. And if they tried, would be able to go in and get it. So we wouldn't stay in the middle. We'd be halfway out. All the way out there to Markham. That's crazy because too much space out here. But the wide midfielders would drop in. If we went in further back, this line of 4 midfielders would get closer to the back line. And then the wide forward would be responsible for any wide action. Defending, we didn't spend a lot of time getting tactically organized for defending. Now, as we got older, but at the under 14 age, we really didn't. I would say at least 8% of our training session stuff was based on possession or attacking play. And I think players enjoy that, and that's more fun, which is really important for under 14s. So there you go. There you've got the roles and responsibilities. Now, I was going to get into training session, but really have the time to get going. So we're going to look at different groups that really used to help us with our possession and our touch. We're going to look at some circle drills. One of the things we did with shooting was a diamond shooting drill. I got this from my dad when I was a coach with Howard Wilkins at Sheffield Wednesday and at Leeds United. It's a pretty awesome diamond shooting game. Our players loved it. Look at our defending drills. We've got tons of small-sided games. One of them is a 4-goal small-sided game, which was like organized chaos that I think you'll like. But the biggest, we do this the most, but towards the end of the season, we did quite a lot of this. And it was attack against defense. But it was attack against defense played differently. And I'll explain that. And it really made I could see a big improvement week by week on how players understood how to play on a full field and what their responsibilities were. And then I've got some other stuff to cover as well. But so what I'll do is rather than continue this, we'll do another 30 minutes, 45 minutes next week where we'll go into all the training session stuff as well. So I apologize again for losing the audio on the last one. I think I know what happened, and it was just me being brain dead and stupid actually. So I hope you get to see this, but we post all these on our YouTube channel and in our members area as well. Let me just show one other thing. I did a few years ago, coaching a team to a national champion. It's 150 pages, and everything that I've talked about on here, just in more depth. Go to worldclasscoaching.com and just click on shops for books and you can find it in there easy enough. So, all right, well, and our training session material next week. Well, thanks for listening.